One person I've learned a lot from is Hunter Thompson. This was in the 10th anniversary edition of Rolling Stone, and I wrote this long piece called Lifer about what it's like to work there. One person I've learned a lot from is Hunter Thompson. I recall one wild night in particular in late December of 1971 during a 3-day editorial conference at Big Sur. Jan had flown in staff editors from around the country and put us up at a motel owned by Esalen, which allowed us to use the famous Esalen mineral baths. Like most business conferences, you sit around during the day and pretend to discuss long-range overview bullshit, then knock off as early as you can and go crazy for the night. Someone had brought along 200 hits of mescaline, and by 7 o'clock the first night we were all pretty well launched. We played in the baths, went out to dinner, ate like pigs, got drunk, and went back to the motel, where about midnight we encountered a crisis. Hunter was running out of wild turkey. For some reason, they don't sell hard liquor anywhere in Big Sur. You have to drive to Carmel, 45 minutes to the north, along a very treacherous Highway 1. Hunter looked at me and Annie Leibovitz and raised a question I've heard him raise many times since. Now, it seems to me we have two choices, he said. We can either go to bed and call it a night, or we can take the rest of this mescaline, get completely twisted, and act like animals. As always, it was a rhetorical question. The three of us ate the mescaline, climbed into Hunter's huge rent-a-car, and headed north at between 50 and 80 miles an hour, depending on the sharpness of each hairpin. Annie and Hunter sat in the front with the rest of the open bottle of wild turkey. I sat in the back with a big tub of ice and a half-dozen joints. Just outside Carmel, about the time I realized I was totally fucked, the California Highway Patrol pulled us over. They ordered Hunter out of the car for a roadside drunk test. I was sure this meant jail for all of us, maybe for years, especially now that Hunter was reacting to the CHP with open hostility. "Why don't you just take me to jail?" he said. "I'm obviously guilty. Annie, I think you better photograph this." She did, probably a good move. The CHP asked Hunter to close his eyes and touch his nose. He missed. "Well, one of my legs is shorter than the other," he explained. He tried it again, snapping his head back. This caused his glasses to fly over his head, and he caught them from behind. "See that?" he said, shaking the shades at the officers. "That should count for something, shouldn't it?" The confrontation continued for several more minutes. Then suddenly the CHP turned to Annie and me and said contemptuously, "Get him out of here." We drove to Carmel, got the liquor, and headed back down to the Esalen baths, where we soaked, naked and blissfully alone, until dawn. Back at the motel, we were hardly in shape for any conference meeting, so Hunter parked the car up on the sidewalk in front of his room, blocking the door from any intruders. Then he set about to build a fire, but there was no firewood. He found a motel picnic bench outside, smashed it, threw it in the fireplace, and burned it. He then brought out a pair of high-powered binoculars, and from his room, we watched the spouting of whales as they headed south in the brilliantly and strangely vibrating Pacific. Later, Annie, dazed and rubbing her forehead, said to me, "You know, Hunter's right. He's so right." I knew what she meant. To be sure, a fine line exists between our pursuit of happiness and our neighbor's right to be offended. But most of us have been raised to let the neighbor decide. Now we'd had a taste of turning up the volume, of risking the first move, of standing up for what was rightfully ours. I've seen Hunter overdo it, of course, but most of the time, like the coffee shop scene in 5 Easy Pieces, his demands are more reasonable and civilized than the rules they break. On that wildly illegal night, we'd done nothing really jail-worthy. And when a motel takes your money for a fireplace, they ought to provide the wood. Extremism and the pursuit of liberty. I wonder if Barry Goldwater ever took acid.